Good evening, Illumineers. Welcome back to Maleficent Monday. So today starts off GenCon week. Of course, GenCon starts on Thursday. I unfortunately am unable to go this year. A sad face. Um, a multitude of reasons. But for all those who are going, I decided that we were going to do a review of the starter decks. Um, Now, I know that the starter decks are given out at random, but this at least give you an idea of how each of them plays, um, and kind of which one I think is the strongest of the group. So I'm going to start with the Sapphire and Steel deck. Um, Obviously, we've got Flounder and Captain Hook, Forceful Duelist, as well as the Goons as low drops. Um, yeah, nothing incredibly powerful. Captain Hook's probably the one that's going to be trading up most of the time because uh, when challenging, 3 is better than 2. Um, your lore your lore based characters are in this next batch. So we've got Aurora, Regal Princess with 2 lore. Um, Actually have Grandma Tala, which is basically you can quest with her, and then your opponent's like, I don't know if I want to get rid of her, or you can just run her into a character that will banish her, and they'll put her in your inkwell, which I think is perfectly flavorful. Prince Eric, this is another one that'll help you trade up. We've got 2 copies of Jasmine Disguise that has 2 lore. We have 3 Mickey Mouse Detective, which will help you ramp. Um, 2 copies of Hercules, True Hero, the Bodyguard. Really important, protecting uh, your lore batteries. 2 copies of Kristoff with 2 lore. We have 3 copies of Aurora Briar Rose. This is really good to help um, what normally might be a trading characters with her -2 strength actually helps clear a character off the table that you might be losing a bunch of characters over. We've got the Maleficent Sinister Visitor with 2 lore, which is again very important. We have the foil. We have Aurora Dreaming Guardian with 2 lore that gives everybody else ward, which is fantastic. And then you have the Maleficent Uninvited 3/6 with 3 lore, really strong. 2 copies of Beast that blows up an item with 2 lore, really good. 2 copies of the Simba Rightful Heir um, that has 2 lore, but also if you need to get character off the table, you can also still gain new lore if you banish another character in a challenge with him, which is fantastic. Mufasa, which oddly enough, 2 copies of the 6 drop, a 4/6 with 3 lore at common is actually really good. Um, yeah, he's a little understated, but there's a reason he's understated, and it's this number over here. 1 copy Scar Mastermind, again another card that helps you take out a larger character without um, you having to lose a bunch of characters in the process and by challenging. Simba returned king, and then Maui demigod, the 8/8 for 8 with 3 lore. Um, Obviously, you're ramping with this deck, so you're going to get the bigger drops, and that's a lot of it's a lot of lore with those characters. Actions: we got 3 develop your brain, 3 fire the cannons, 2 ransack, and 2 smash. We have 2 1 jump ahead, 1 grab your sword, 3 magic golden flower, and 3 coconut basket, and 2 frying pans. So this is the cost curve. Cost curve is an interesting discussion. It's called a mana curve in Magic, but it's basically a determination of the cost of every card that you have in your deck. You typically, normally, an aggressive deck is going to go really high on the 1 and 2 cost and cards, cut down sharply at 3, and even sharper at 4, and nothing above those 2. This is a ramp or mid-range deck, so there's a drop off, but not a steep drop off, because you'll notice there's a number at 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8 even, to get you into the bigger characters faster. This deck has an enormous amount of healing, with the golden flower, the coconut baskets. Let's see, I don't think there's any more. We've got the combat tricks with the characters, both Aurora and Scar. You have item removal with Beast. And then you've got other removal through Fire the Cannons and Smash, as well as Grab Your Sword. Not really high on Frying Pan. It's not really a good way to recur this currently. Being able to ramp into other characters faster to get to your higher lore characters is the goal of this deck. Let me talk about each of the decks and then we'll go back. So the Ruby Emerald starter. This one is probably the hardest of the 3 decks to play, because there are a lot of decision points to make. It messes with your opponent a lot, because it forces them into bad trades, situations that are bad for them. So we got a number of 1-drops here with the Duke and Sergeant Tibbs. 5 of those total. We have 2 Prince Ali with Ward. This comes up pretty often when we want to shift into Heroic Outlaw. It's in this deck. We have the Cruella de Vil, 1 copy of. We have 3 Megars. This lets you play this and then swing one of your cheaper characters into a bigger character and banish those. We got a couple of Donalds. 1 copy of Le Fleur. readying a character where they can't quest that turn, still a really good ability to protect one of your characters, or if they've quested and then ready, maybe they can challenge and banish a character too on the same turn. Horus is actually above statted for his cost, even though he just has one lore. One copy of Iago, because he's got to drive you crazy. We got 2 copies of Jasper. Very good character. Stopping opponent's characters from questing on the next turn. We got 3 Steamboat Pilots, 2 Peter Pan with Evasive. We have 3 Street Rats for some, I won't say lore stealing, but messing with your opponent's lore total. 3 Pongo, 2/3 with Evasive and 2 lore. Really good character. Scar. We've got 3 copies of Mad Hatter Gracious Host. This is a very good character despite its stat line, because 3 lore, and if your opponent challenges him, you get to draw a card. So even if they KO it, it's replaced itself, and you probably gain 3 lore off of it, which is really good. If they leave it on the table, it makes it even worse. 2 Captain, 3 Rapunzel. Stat line isn't great. A 5/4 for 6. Usually you want your willpower higher, so it can survive multiple challenges. But forcing your opponent to lose the lore and being able to quest twice, or for 2, is really good, even if they get to trade one of their lore drops for Rapunzel. We got Stitch Abomination, 4/6 with 3 lore for 6. And then we have the Heroic Outlaw, who is just perfect. Yeah, stealing lore is magnificent, and this is technically this is a 4-point lore swing, and if your opponent doesn't have anything out, you can still quest for 2, but that ability is ridiculous. Stampede, this is a fine card in a starter deck. There are going to be some situations where your opponent's character has damage on it, and they've kept it back where you can't swing into it, and this will allow you to get rid of it. Or maybe a situation where your opponent challenged one of your characters and banished it and has damage on that character, and you can use this to clean it up. Vicious Betrayal. Again, this is another way that you can trade a lower costed character for a higher costed character, and with a bonus if you targeted a villain with it. He's got a sword. Another one of those nice combat tricks to take out higher costed characters. This card, Steal from the Rich, this is a beauty. Whenever one of your characters quests this turn, each opponent loses 1 lore. So that's a static effect for the rest of the turn. So yeah, if go wide decks are going to absolutely love this card. Obviously the problem is the go wide decks have to worry about Grab Your Sword and Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, and then we also have 3 copies of Dragonfire, 3 copies of Mother Knows Best for a little tempo. Bouncing is very good to mess with your opponent's setup. It slows them down a turn, and it's really good for getting rid of bodyguard characters. Oh, you played and exerted that bodyguard, and I just put it back in your hand. Now I get to um, remove the character that you were going to protect. Items, we have stolen scimitar. It's fine, not nothing to write home about. In a starter deck, especially a starter deck challenge, this is fine to give a boost. Shield of Virtue. Um, the cost may be a little high for this card, but since there are no Fan the Flames in this deck, this is a fairly decent replacement. Lets you save a character or protect a character from being challenged. Yeah, cost curve on this one is it's a lot better as far as cost in the first three. Much lower to the ground. Um, there are a number. That's a lot of 5 drops. Um, but the other numbers seem to drop off fairly quickly. Percentages of ink to non-ink. This is about where you want to be. Um, you want to be about 3/4 ink and 1/4 non-ink. So again, this one's a little more difficult to pilot because it's going to make your opponent. There's going to be deeper strategies. You've got evasive characters to mostly quest unimpeded and not get challenged off the board. And then you've got characters like Jasper and Iago to mess with opponents questing. So again, that's going to take a little bit more practice to understand. Last but not least is Amber Amethyst. So we've got the most 1-drops. We've got Hey Hey and New Dog. We've got Olaf and Pascal. So that's 10 1-drops in this deck. Support on Hey Hey is fine. He's just a 1/2, so it's not great. Pascal, however, evasive is very good. So he makes your opponent have removal or an evasive character on the table. Makes questing very easy. Into the 2-drops, we've got Minnie Mouse, DrFacilier. Mostly you're going to be using Facilier to challenge, to try to get characters off the table. We've got more 2-drops in Magic Broom and Yzma. Again, all of these have 1 lore. The Broom, you can either recur or remove cards from your opponent's discard pile, which is really good. Yzma lets you filter your deck when questing. Your 3-drops, you've got Maximus that shrinks a character, making it easier to take a character out without losing one of yours. Mickey Mouse actually has 2 lore in the spot. You have Maleficent, Sorceress, that replaces herself, or cantrips, which means when you play the card, you get to draw a card, so it doesn't cost you a card per se. And you have Rafiki, who's 3/3 for 3. 1 lore is not what we're using him for here. He's got Rush. We want to take characters off the table. And these are one of the colors that doesn't really have removal per se. Wardrobe, higher willpower than most 3-drops, which is fairly good. Ariel, can't sing song, but 2 lore is good in that spot. Cinderella, uh, a lot of willpower. This ability is really nuts in a princess deck. There aren't a ton of princesses in this particular deck, but there's enough that that ability can be very, very good. Obviously, it does put a target on her back, but 5 willpower is difficult to get through with one character most of the time. Hades for some recursion. We have Jafar. This is the I want to take character off the board. Jafar. We have Jetsam, 3/3 evasive, which is really good. 1 Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer. Broom's cheaper, and brooms come back to hand when they're banished. 2 lore, very good. Moana, Princess Synergy, 6 willpower, 3 lore, and questing readies other princesses. They can't quest for the rest of the turn. It's very good to be able to quest with all your princesses, ready your other princesses, and keep them back so your opponent can't get to them, or you might even run a few of them into your opponent's characters and clear some space off the table. We got a Flotsam to go with Jetsam so that you get the crossover abilities. Rush is nice to take out random characters that they aren't expecting. 7, just a big body. DrFacilier, Agent Provocator. This card is a beating. The stats, not great. 4/5 for 7 is way understated. When you can shift for 5, though, it's much more manageable. 3 lore, absolutely a beating. And then one of your characters is banished in a challenge, you may return that card to your hand. So you get to constantly recur your characters, whether your opponent's running into them, challenging them, trying to get them off the board, or if you're challenging their characters and getting them off the board and then returning your guy to hand. This one is a better version of Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer because it works with everybody. Actions, we got to control your temper to mess up your combat math, or challenging math in this case. 2 bear a guest to do some digging. 1 part of your world, a little more recursion, get your character back from the discard pile. We have 3 friends on the other side. Perfect card drawing. We have 2 Hakuna Matata for some mass healing. And then, speaking of healing, we also have 3 copies of Dinglehopper. Alright, this is probably the most aggressive of all the 3 decks. As you can see, we've got most 1, 2, 3, and 4 drops, and then it sharply drops to 5, 6, and 7s. This is definitely what I would consider an aggro deck. Now, as far as your lore numbers, you've only got 1 character at 3 cost or below that has 2 lore. And then everybody else is at 4, 5, and 7 if it's not shifted. So if your idea is playing characters and trying to race. Um, this deck can easily take out your opponent's characters, but and you might nickel and dime somebody by gaining a lore here and gaining a lore there. But I think even though this one is mostly lower cross characters, I think there's a lot of combat or challenging you're going to be doing in this deck. And so the math is going to be important. Like, can I play a Rafiki down and take out a character that they're not expecting to be taken out? And then I'm making quests with the other characters I have, sort of back and forth. If, as an advanced player, I would probably want to play the Ruby Emerald deck if I was lucky enough to pull that one. The only side effect of the Ruby Emerald deck is you're aggressively questing with your characters in this deck. The evasive characters, no brainer. The Mad Hatters and the Jaspers, you want to quest with characters that mess up your opponent. Cruella de Vil. You want to use your other characters to take out your opponent's characters. Now that's where the problem lies in this color pair, this ink color pair, is most of your removal. Stampede is situational. Vicious Betrayal, he's got a sword, and Stolen Scimitar can give those bonuses, but that requires your opponent's character to be exerted. So that is problematic. Mother's Knows Best is your best temporary solution, letting you return a character. Being a song you can play for free, so that's an option. Dragonfire is probably the cleanest answer, but it does cost 5. Whereas the Steel Sapphire deck has probably the best targeted removal. With Fire Your Cannons and Smash and grab your sword to hit all your opponent's characters. As far as the, let me go to the list version. Yeah, this doesn't give me what I need. What is unique about the Sapphire Steel deck, and probably the reason that I would think it is the best of the 3 overall, is you have a 2-drop with 2 lore. You have 2, 4. You have 4 3-drops with 2 lore. And your 4 drops, you have 3 with 2 lore. Your 5 drops, one, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 with 2 lore, one with 3 lore. Your 6-drop has 3 lore. Your other 6-drop has 2 lore, and then your 7 and 8-drop have 2 and 3 lore. So you have easier paths to get lore faster in this color pairing based on the deck design. You have removal that can take out characters that your opponent has just played, keeping them from questing or challenging your characters. You have some draw filtering with Develop Your Brain and Ransack. You've got Ramp with getting extra cards into your inkwell to play additional cards for the next turn, with One Jump Ahead, Mickey Mouse Detective, and Grandma Tala. You got the only deck to have a area of effect, hit all opponents' characters for 2. You have healing with the flowers and the coconut basket. And the coconut basket is just nutty when you want to play more characters anyway. So you can set up situations where you can take out an opponent's character in a challenge, have the coconut basket in play, and then play a new character and heal up the character that was doing the challenging. So now your opponent has to work harder to get that character off the table, because now they have one less character and you have more characters in play. So while I would probably enjoy the Ruby Sapphire deck the most, if I was going to end up with a random starter for an event, I really like where Steel Sapphire is. Alright guys, good luck to all of those going to GenCon. I will be watching from afar. Until next time, no matter the game, there is no escape from the tiger.